Have you ever felt like you're sleeping next to someone who used to be your everything and now feels like a stranger? You still share the same bed, the same meals, the same memories, but the warmth, the closeness, it's not there like it used to be. She doesn't smile the same. She doesn't reach for your hand like before, and you lie awake wondering, when did we stop being us? If you're over 50, it's easy to blame time, to think maybe this is just what happens, maybe we're just getting older. But let me tell you something most people never say out loud. Love doesn't fade with age. It fades when we stop feeding it. And here's the good news. That spark, it's not gone, it's just waiting to be reignited. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with small, powerful habits that speak straight to the heart. And at the end, I'll give you one simple nightly question, just 5 minutes, that could change everything in your relationship. So stay with me, because your love story isn't over. In fact, it might just be about to begin again. Comment below if this feels familiar, because you're not alone and you're in the right place. A lot of people think that love fades as we get older, that it's just part of aging, like gray hair or back pain. You hear couples say, "We've grown apart," or "We're not like we used to be," and most chalk it up to time, doing what time does. But here's something worth holding on to. Love doesn't fade because of age. It fades because of emotional distance. It fades when we stop showing up with our hearts, not just our habits. It's not your wrinkles, it's not your body, and it's certainly not how many years you spent together. Love begins to slip when small hurts go unspoken, when one of you needs comfort and the other misses it. It fades when we stop reaching out and start pulling away without even realizing it. I remember a man once told me, "After 35 years of marriage, I woke up one day and realized my wife didn't smile at me the same way anymore. She felt cold, distant. I thought maybe it was her hormones or just age catching up with us. But when they finally sat down for an honest conversation, something they hadn't done in years, she looked at him and said, 'I feel like you stopped seeing me a long time ago.'" That moment hit him like a brick. She hadn't fallen out of love. She had fallen into invisibility. That's something many men don't see until it's almost too late, because men and women often move through emotions differently. For many men, physical closeness is the gateway to connection, but for women, it's emotional closeness that opens the door to intimacy. So when she starts to pull away, it's easy to blame the years or assume the romance just naturally dies out. But more often than not, what's really missing is emotional safety. That feeling of being heard, of being truly seen, not for what she does, but for who she is. That's where connection lives. That's what makes love last. And the most hopeful part? What was lost doesn't have to stay lost. Just as love fades in small, quiet moments, it can return in the same way. One sincere word, one meaningful glance, one honest conversation at a time. Because when we understand how emotional connection works, we can begin to rebuild it. And that's exactly where this journey continues.
So if emotional disconnection, not age, is what causes love to fade, then what really reignites it? It's not a tropical getaway. It's not a box of chocolates or a fancy dinner once a year. It's something far deeper, more meaningful, and often overlooked: emotional safety. That's what truly awakens desire in a long-term relationship. Not grand gestures, but the feeling of being seen, valued, and deeply chosen. Especially when life becomes routine, when the body starts to change, and when emotional needs begin to shift in ways even she might not fully understand. I remember speaking to a woman who had been married for nearly 30 decades. She looked me in the eye and said, "I still love my husband. I don't want to leave, but some days I feel like a ghost. I clean, I cook, I care for everyone, but I'm not sure he even sees me anymore. She wasn't angry. She wasn't trying to escape. What she wanted was something so simple, yet so powerful. To feel like she still mattered. That's where emotional intimacy either grows or withers. In that quiet need to be noticed, not just as a helper or a partner, but as a woman with a heart that still longs to be chosen. The trouble is, this kind of distance rarely arrives with a loud announcement. It creeps in silently. Days blur into weeks, gestures become routine, affection becomes mechanical, and while the house may stay calm, the heart begins to drift. Many men don't see it happening. As long as things look okay on the surface, no fighting, no yelling, they assume everything's fine. But silence can be heavier than shouting, and emotional absence can be just as painful as physical distance. What's important to understand is that a woman's desire doesn't just vanish, it hides. It retreats behind unspoken disappointments, behind the question, do I still matter to him? But here's the beautiful truth. When she feels emotionally safe, when she knows she's not just part of your routine, but still the one you choose, her heart opens again. And when that door opens, intimacy flows naturally. Not forced, not asked for, just there, waiting. On the other hand, when emotional safety is missing, even the kindest gestures can feel hollow. Even love can feel far away. So if something feels off, not quite broken, but not quite right, it may not be about your looks, your age, or your performance. It may be about emotional presence. The kind that says, I see you. I still choose you. And the best part is, this kind of love doesn't require perfection. It starts with small moments, small actions that speak directly to her heart. Because that's where we begin to rebuild the emotional bridge, the one that leads back to connection, to closeness, and to the kind of intimacy that lasts. Let's talk now about how to do that step by step.
So, how do you create emotional safety? How do you rebuild the connection that once felt effortless? The answer isn't in grand one-time gestures. It's not about whisking her away for a weekend or buying something expensive to prove your love. Those moments can be nice, sure, but what truly matters are the things you do every single day. Because connection isn't kept alive through big events. It's built in the ordinary, in the quiet, in the small choices you make to show up with your heart day after day. Let's talk about 3 simple daily habits that can breathe life back into your relationship. The first is learning to speak directly to her essence, not just her appearance, not just what she does for you, but who she is at her core. Most compliments we give are surface level. You look nice. Thanks for dinner. Those are fine, but they don't touch the soul. What touches a woman's heart are the words that reflect how deeply you notice her. Try saying, I love the way you make people feel welcome. Watching you care for others reminds me why I fell for you. Or, I noticed how patient you were with the kids today. That kind of strength, it inspires me. You see, it's not about poetry, it's about presence. When your words come from a place of genuine observation and emotion, she feels it. And when she feels seen, she softens. She trusts. The second habit is one that too many couples overlook in long-term relationships: physical affection that has no strings attached. Over time, touch can become either too rare or too loaded. You kiss her or reach for her hand, and she feels the weight of expectation behind it. And slowly, what once was a simple act of love begins to feel like a transaction. So bring back non-sexual affection. Touch her in a way that says, I'm here. "I love you. I choose you," without needing anything in return. Place your hand gently on her back as you walk by. Kiss her forehead before you leave in the morning. Hug her and don't let go too quickly. Hold her hand while watching TV, not because you want something more, but because you just want to be close. These gestures are small, but they carry weight. They remind her that she is still desired, still held, still safe. And finally, the third habit is about presence. True, mindful presence. In long relationships, it's easy to move through life side by side without ever truly looking at each other. You talk, but you don't connect. You hear, but you don't listen. You're there, but not really there. Start noticing the little things again. When she sighs, ask what's on her mind. When she tells you a story, remember it and bring it up later, just to show her it mattered to you. Ask her questions that go beyond the routine. What's been weighing on your week this week? Or, what's one thing I could do that would make you feel more loved? And when she talks, just listen. Not to fix, not to move on, just to be there. Even in silence, your presence is powerful. Because in the end, the strongest relationships aren't built on fireworks. They're built on consistency, on the way you say good morning, on the glance you give across the room, on the way your hand reaches for hers without thinking. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up. And you have to show her every single day that she still matters. Because connection doesn't live in the big, flashy moments. It lives in your daily tone, your gaze, your effort. And when those three habits, meaningful words, touch without expectation, and deep presence, become your rhythm, something beautiful begins to happen. Her heart starts to trust again. And from that place, everything else becomes easier. Let's continue, because there's one more thing men often overlook, and it just might be the most powerful form of intimacy of all.
Now, let's talk about something that might seem small, but holds the power to transform your relationship more than anything else. Listening. Not the kind of listening where you're waiting for your turn to speak, not where you're silently preparing your defense or your next solution, but real, honest, heart-centered listening. There's a man I once spoke to, Mark, married for 28 years, who thought his marriage was falling apart. His wife had grown distant. They hadn't been intimate in months. She barely looked him in the eye anymore. He tried the usual things, flowers, compliments, planning a weekend getaway. Nothing worked. Then one evening he did something different. He sat beside her, took a breath, and said, "I know I've missed something. I want to understand. I'm not here to fix it. I just want to listen." At first she hesitated. She didn't trust that he meant it. But then she began to speak. She shared her loneliness, her exhaustion, how for years she'd been carrying the weight of the relationship without feeling truly seen or supported. And for once, Mark didn't interrupt, he didn't justify, he didn't solve. He just listened. And that night, for the first time in years, she cried in front of him, not out of frustration, but out of relief. Because finally, she felt safe enough to let her heart be seen again. This is something so many men miss, not because they don't care, but because they've been taught to fix instead of feel. But here's the truth. When a woman feels like she's constantly being corrected, advised, or redirected, she doesn't feel closer. She feels unseen. And slowly, she starts to withdraw. She may stay quiet, she may seem okay, but inside, she's building a wall. Not because she wants distance, but because she doesn't feel safe. So here's the key. Stop trying to fix her feelings. Just hold space for them.
When you do that, when you become the safe place where she can lay her heart without judgment, something changes. Her guard drops, her trust grows, and her desire to be close returns. Because when you stop trying to fix and simply listen, she feels safe to come back. And that kind of emotional closeness, it's the deepest form of intimacy there is. Let's now bring everything we've learned to one simple, powerful habit that can change everything, starting tonight.